Now, talking about buyer's remorse, New Yorkers have that in spades after they elected a commie, Zohran Mamdani, as mayor, thinking they'd be getting cheaper groceries, cheaper rent, free bus trips. Remember the celebrations? They were so happy.
Sharia law starts now. Absolutely. Zohran Mamdani, Islamic Caliphate, our brother in Islam, Islamic Caliphate of New York starts today, baby.
God, there is just something so electric, so satisfying about knowing that my MAGA parents, wherever they are probably having a horrible night tonight. Ah!
Yes, Sharia now, but instead of free stuff, they have rubbish-strewn streets, people dying of hypothermia, and soon higher taxes. They thought only the richest of the rich would be hit with higher taxes. Wrong, dead wrong, and now the regret is real.
The mayor, with the greatest respects, in every campaign speech, in every debate where you engage, we opened our ears to listen. Now today, accept the words echoing from us now. Do your job as mayor and leave our taxes out.
Giving only two options. You're saying if we don't tax the rich, then I gotta increase property taxes. We are not a pawn in Southeast Queens. We are not part of your negotiation tactics. Zohran Mamdani, you are out your goddamn mind.
Joining me now is Newsweek's senior editor-at-large, Josh Hammer. Josh, we will get to what looks to be a possible assassination attempt at Mar-a-Lago later, but first, tell me about Mayor Mamdani's first 50 or so days in office.
Well, Rita, there's an old quote from H.L. Mencken, one of my favorite quotes in all of American politics, actually. He's a 20th century newspaper columnist and social critic. And about a century or so ago, in the early 20th century, he famously said that democracy is the theory that the common man knows what he wants and he deserves to get it good and hard. And that is exactly what is happening in New York City. They are getting it really good and really hard. Actually, in fact, Rhea, not to make this too personal, I was actually set to fly to New York City for a speaking event, but there's a terrible blizzard happening there now, and partially due to the fear as to how terrible the infrastructure is and the complete inability. Apparently, there's going to be no cars on the road, I'm told now, into this Monday here, this early this week here in New York, because the roads are expected to just be completely covered with snow. Back in the day, I grew up in the New York area. Something as prosaic as that. Back in the day, New York City was actually renowned for having the most systemic and efficient and effective snow plowing and snow shoveling in the world. I saw earlier today over here back in the U.S., I saw Mark Levine, the New York City comptroller, put out an all hands on deck, a signal blast to the world. Come sign up to be a volunteer snow shoveler for $19 and change an hour, which, by the way, I should note, isn't Mamdani the guy who literally campaigned on a $30 minimum wage? So what, you're trying to give $30 minimum wage to someone trying to fry your french fries in McDonald's or be an Uber driver? But now the city's like actually in crisis. People like me are not coming because we expect it to be a horrific zombie apocalypse during a snowstorm. And you're offering to pay like less than half of the wage. I mean, square that circle for me. So it's absolutely appalling there. The only thing that I can possibly say, Rita, is that it's good that you have a lot of Democrats, especially the ones in the state capital, Albany, who are starting to push back there and starting to say to the communist and Gracie Mansion in Manhattan there, they're starting to say no. So New York City actually very well might find itself on its own, even within the state of New York, which would be a really, really fascinating development.
Well, I love this call for the snow shovelers to come forward, but you do need your ID, Josh. You don't need ID to vote, but you need ID if you want to shovel snow in New York City. And the budget that Mamdani is delivering is bigger than Florida, the entire state of Florida. I mean, let's just see where some of this money is going, some of this largesse. 5.6 million for the Office of Racial Equity, 4.6 million for the Commission on Racial Equity, and just a lazy 835,000 for the Commission on Gender Equity. This is what New Yorkers voted for, Josh. I mean, can they really plead ignorance when they knew what a radical Mamdani was, and they backed him?
So I'm glad that you flagged the budgetary metrics because it's actually quite revealing. This is actually one of the reasons that there is this newfound tension between the city of New York and the state of New York, represented by Kathy Hochul and her Democratic legislative allies in Albany. So the New York City municipal budget last year was quote unquote only 117 billion, which by the way is still the same size, as you correctly note, as the entire budget of my current state, the state of Florida, where we have a rainy day fund here and money left over because Ron DeSantis just totally kicks butt and the state is governed really, really well. So Mamdani raises $10 billion in the budget from last fiscal year just to this year. And that's apparently that $10 billion and his inability to close that gap. That is why he is saying to his fellow Democrats in Albany, you guys better soak the rich or else ... I'm going to soak the middle and working class with property taxes. But, you didn't have to raise the municipal budget by $10 billion. You could have left it. It was pretty bloated. I mean, I would like to have a conversation. Yeah. I would like to see a conversation begin about trimming the budget. I mean, how about that for a wild thing? Let's get Elon Musk and some mini Doge team there, in City Hall in New York City there. But at a bare minimum, bro, at a bare minimum, can you not inflate on top of a municipal budget that's literally the exact same size as the nation's third largest state, the very free state of Florida there? It's totally astounding. But again, this is what New Yorkers apparently want there. I find it positively horrifying, frankly, but it's what they wanted and they're getting it.
That's it. Elections have consequences, and New Yorkers are feeling those consequences right now. Now, let's talk about what happened in Palm Beach, Florida, at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago property earlier today, where a man in his early 20s was shot and killed by Secret Service agents in the early hours of the morning. Is this being treated as an assassination attempt, Josh?
So it's very early, and we don't necessarily have. There was not like a big FBI press conference or anything like that. So we'll probably learn more exactly as to how law enforcement is going to treat this in the days to come. It certainly looks to me like this man had every intention of trying to assassinate Donald Trump and his wife Melania Trump. I believe he actually drove down from North Carolina. Turns out that Donald Trump was actually not even at Mar-a-Lago. He was in Washington, D.C. at that time there. The details of the story are such that he had a shotgun and a barrel of gasoline. One can only speculate as to why he would have a personal tank of gasoline with him there, trying to get onto the premises of Mar-a-Lago. And apparently when law enforcement saw his weapon and said, drop it, and he kept on raising it, that's when he was fatally shot. These people are invariably mentally ill. Think back to Ryan Routh, who was the man, I believe also who was last seen actually living in North Carolina, who came down to West Palm Beach, Florida, and tried to assassinate Donald Trump playing on the Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach back in September 2024. This guy was lunatic off his rockers. He was basically a Reddit comment section come to life. He was spouting off all these platitudes. The question, Rita, is where are these people getting riled up? Who are they listening to? How are they being radicalized to try to take down Donald Trump, try to, tragically in this case, successfully assassinate my late friend Charlie Kirk? Who is inspiring these people who are already vulnerable, already, frankly, deeply unstable, and probably just mentally unwell? Who is taking advantage of these vulnerable people and then trying to instigate them to attack acts or to commit acts of violence? And frankly, that is a very grave question and has a very, very straightforward answer, which is it is elected Democrats, whether it's Tim Walz and Jacob Fry in the state of Minnesota, trying to kind of borrow the Hamas playbook from the Middle East, trying to get these people to sacrifice themselves in an act of martyrdom for the sake of winning the public relations war. That's what we saw happen with Renee Good and with Alex Preddy there in Minnesota there. Here, we don't know exactly who it is, but I can certainly speculate. I think back to the shooter in 2017 who shot up half the Republican congressional baseball team. That guy, James Hodgkinson was his name, was a dyed-in-the-wool MSNBC viewer. Sometimes, Rita, it's really actually as simple as that. They are trying to get these people to commit terrible, terrible things.
Well, when you have this endless narrative of we're living under a fascist regime and everyone's rights are in jeopardy and Trump is the new age Hitler, then it's not surprising that mentally ill people may take it upon themselves to do something about that. And I've got to say, talk about mentally ill people online, the comments I've seen on pieces about this, just, again, appalling, but sadly not all that surprising. People saying, at least he had a go, he had the right idea, hope the next one can follow through. That sort of commentary seems to be just so prevalent and so normalized among the left. The left has a problem with political violence. We've seen it over and over again, and it's something that is not widely acknowledged, certainly in the media, Josh.
This is the issue that will tear America apart. I'm really not exaggerating when I say that. If there is any issue that genuinely will take this country down, and I mean that very, very sincerely. Look, Abraham Lincoln, my favorite hero in American history, he gave a very famous speech in 1838 called the Lyceum Address in Springfield, Illinois. He was actually only 29 years old at the time, I believe, 20 or 29. And he famously said that America would never be destroyed from beyond, from without, that she would only be destroyed from within and would come essentially at our own hands. Now, tragically, Lincoln actually was quite prescient. He, of course, led the country through the Civil War, where we came perilously close to doing exactly that. But now here we are, over a century and a half after the Civil War, and for many people, overwhelmingly, as you correctly note, on the political left, they have made a decision where they are not content to simply let our political disagreements be hashed out in the marketplace of ideas. They will not be settled at the ballot box. And the day that more and more people finally decide to ditch the ballot box once and for all and to take up knives and firearms and God forbid something even worse than that in its place there, that really is the day that the American Republic becomes perilously close to just dying off there. Famously, this country was made as a republic if you can keep it, is what Benjamin Franklin said back in 1787 to a curious onlooker there in the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. And it really is up to us to keep this republic there, and political violence could easily be the death knell of this country, I fear.
Now to the Supreme Court decision on President Trump's tariffs. Tell me about this decision. The court was split 6-3, and Justice Kavanaugh wrote a very interesting dissent. Explain this ruling to my audience, Josh, and what you expect to see happening next.
So the first thing to know is just kind of before we get into legal weeds is it's going to be a total mess if the government actually has to start offering refunds for the dozens, hundreds, I think it's roughly $175 billion in tariff revenue that they have already corrected through these reciprocal tariffs, which have been implemented through this late 1970s statute, the IEEPA, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. So the basic legal argument here is that this statute that passed during the Jimmy Carter presidency, a little over a half century ago, give or take, was it allows the president, Congress delegates to the president the ability to regulate importation when there is an economic emergency. Donald Trump, because of his theory on trade, he cares a lot about the balance of trade, he cares a lot about the fact that America has been ripped off by the globalist class for a long time there, viewed our massive trade deficits as an economic emergency. And he therefore invoked this statute to impose these tariffs. On the other side, you have the basic constitutional baseline that says that Congress shall have the ability to impose duties, so tariffs and things like that. So the basic legal question is, did this statute carve out a dispensation from the basic constitutional rule? I was very candid with my own audience on my show, Rita. I said this is actually a very close legal question. I also said that the administration is correct. I do think that Kavanaugh has the better of the argument in his dissent. I am hardly shocked, though, if I'm being candid, that the administration lost. I thought that Neil Gorsuch, I thought that Amy Coney Barrett, I thought that some of these Republican nominee justices would go the other way and side against the administration. The good news is that there are plenty of other statutes that seem to actually be sure legal footing for Donald Trump to do exactly this. Kavanaugh, towards the end of his dissent, actually lists at least 3 or 4 different statutes. So the good news is that I don't think we will probably get into this very messy, sordid business of giving out refunds, whoever the heck that would possibly work there. I think Trump will probably just try to do this all over again on a different statute. I'm sure some people will sue, to be clear. But some of these other statutes seem to have surely legal footing, from what I can tell.
Well, apparently this ruling did not mention what to do with the hundreds of billions that's already been collected. You would think that would be something to actually, comment on. Before you go, is Amy Coney Barrett Donald Trump's biggest mistake of his first term, or amongst his biggest mistakes? Because she has had, she's been a frustration for the administration, let's just say.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Look, I will say this. I will say that the two most conservative justices on the U.S. Supreme Court by far are Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. Clarence Thomas has been on the court for 35 years, Alito for 20 years there. All three of Trump's picks are correct more often than they are incorrect. None of them is a Clarence Thomas or Sam Alito stalwart. For what it's worth, reading my own personal 2 cents, I think Donald Trump's worst mistake from his first term was the First Step Act. This pro criminal justice reform jailbreak legislation there was kind of ushered in by Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Unfortunately, was kind of a bit of a precursor to the George Floyd Black Lives Matter summer. Trump, for what it's worth, has done something of a mea culpa on that there. I don't think that we'll ever see that again there. God willing, we'll continue to do a little better when it comes to judicial nominations, including the U.S. Supreme Court.
Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time tonight.